Hi. This is going to be a weird little video where, for the first time, I think, on the internet, I'm going to show you guys my computer and essentially what I could call my studio. Quick thing that I'm going to explain while I'm opening Audacity is if you're expecting some sort of podcast editing tutorial thing that's full of detail and all this, that, and the other, you're not going to get that here, so I'd recommend checking out some other videos, perhaps. I'm really not going to go into like the educational side of anything. I'm just going to show the people that are following the Shifty Keys podcast for 2 years now, Jesus Christ, exactly what I do to edit the podcast nowadays. It's changed quite a bit. So, the first thing I'm going to do is go to File, Import, and Audio, and look through this mess. We're going to be I'm going to be demonstrating what I would do editing-wise to the Emergency podcast, which was episode 99. I always copy it just in case. While that is importing, I'm just going to say, forgive me if I try demonstrating any audio clip stuff. Because my captures that I'm going to be using for the Windows and the Mac, which I'll be showing you later, I can capture video. I actually can't capture sound yet, and if you look down at what the date is, if I want to release this on time, I actually don't have enough time to figure out what the deal is. So, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so this is weird doing it from this perspective. I don't really like showing people my computer, not for bad reasons, it's just I'm not used to it. And this is the first time I've ever recorded something through my computers. Yeah, if you're new to Audacity, this can take a while. And speaking of this particular program, it is for free. So if you're into editing stuff and you don't want to blow an entire budget on it, Google it, but be aware there are dodgy links to download this. You can get it for free from the company that made it totally legally. And there's the waveforms. Anyway. First thing I'm going to say is I've adjusted a lot of Audacity settings, so I'll run through any differences that you would see if you got it brand new. I don't know what particular Audacity version this is, but that doesn't matter for now. First thing you may notice, that's the podcast. The blue waves represent our lovely voices, so to speak. You know, everyone else seems to be lovely. My voice comes out and it's like, ugh. Any points where it's like really, I don't know, long, wide, however you describe little bits like that there. That's where it gets loud. Everything else seems to have some sort of volume that it keeps to. I normally balance them out when recording in TeamSpeak, which is we never actually thank them for this. I'll get through to actually telling you what I do, but first, thanks to RoosterSpeak, because without their TeamSpeak server, we would not have the Shifty Key podcast. Alright, first thing you may notice, along the blue waves there are some red lines, and to get these red lines, and I highly recommend this, when you're default you would see that. Always have this on. View, show clipping. It highlights any points where your audio is way too loud. And you don't want audio too loud. You don't want to hurt the ears of the people listening. And you certainly don't want to damage anyone's sound equipment. So, you know, I'm sure it wouldn't be too extreme. You know, you're uploading to YouTube. I think they have precautions about it, but it doesn't do your sound quality any good either. Right. So the first thing I would do on every podcast is look into any wave files like this. Oh, one sec, my dogs are barking. When they've calmed down, I will continue. I'm actually going to check what they're doing. What are you doing, Josh? There's something there. This is audio stuff, don't worry. Right. Right. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, if you see any waveforms that have got like a little red line that goes across them like this, one thing that I highly recommend is just highlighting any dodgy waveforms. Go to Effect and go to Repair. You know, you could turn it down, but repairing the damaged waveforms that are gonna happen when you clip seems to be a much more effective way of getting rid of the issue. A neat little trick that I also have, if you highlight something like that, say if I wanted to repair that, it doesn't really need to be repaired, but you can do the shortcut of hitting Control and R, and it repairs that waveform as well. And I would do it to like all of these, like every single one. And as you can see, there's not too many on here. Like here's another one. But what I'm going to do is demonstrate something on here. Let's say you got this waveform, and you're like, I want to repair this, and you hit Control R, you want to repair it. Oh, it won't let you. It has to, like, you can only use that repair effect on 128 samples. So the second thing I guess I'm going to show you is down here. I think when you first get Audacity, I think that's the default that you get, which shows you how many hours, minutes, and like seconds you've highlighted. Change that to samples as well. That's the one that I have. And just because you can literally just see how much you can get away with repairing. For example, if I tried repairing that, I already know that there's too much and it's just going to waste time if I go like this, you know, it won't let me do it. So I know exactly how much I can do. Like, I could go that much, but I can't do that much. You know, this is something I learned. The narrower you do it, the better result you get. I'm not going to go through all of the podcasts in front of you here today, like I would if I was releasing this one, but it's already, this one's come out, this one's already on the YouTube page. This is just for a demonstration. So I'm going to spare you the waste of time, which would be fixing all of them. So just pretend they're gone. The next thing I would do, I would run through listening to the entire podcast. But whilst I'm doing that, I get rid of any silences, and not all of them. I know there is probably a way of getting rid of every single point where there's silence, but that would be a bit extreme. You would just get like run-on sentences everywhere, and wouldn't be pleasurable. It wouldn't be a pleasure to listen to. So, one little trick that I do is I drag the entire track down a pixel. And you probably don't even see a difference, but if I highlight a specific piece of audio, look carefully here. Right there, it's just flat line all the way across there. But once I drag that down, you see that there is something else there. There is just this kind of another flat line, but it's a little bit thicker than the other one. What that actually shows you is when someone still has their push to talk button down on TeamSpeak. This here is just absolute silence. There's nothing here whatsoever. Whereas here, there may be a little bit of noise still. You know, for some reason I've just kept a natural rule of thumb, which is I only delete silences that are, you know, exactly that, silences. And I tend to leave these bits safe. I don't know why. Unless someone's actually just held the push to talk button down. Now, one thing that's going to suck, because I kind of want to demonstrate why I do this, but I can't because I don't think the audio will get captured, is That's about 4 seconds of silence there, maybe even longer. About 5 seconds of silence. And Dr. Spark says something there, and then there's nothing. It's not exactly the most awkward silence we've ever had on the podcast. It's really when we've just finished a big conversation. It happens. But what I do to make the podcast smoother is usually cut down all these silences just by deleting a huge chunk of silence. Normally leaving something about a second long between any voice coming in. It's just something that I do because when you've got an audio podcast and there's more than 1 second of silence, I don't want the person listening to think, hang on, has it frozen? Or, why is the podcast stopped? Because 4 seconds of silence, if I was to randomly stop for 4 seconds and you didn't have anything to look at, that's a very long time of silence. So what I would do while listening through the podcast is remove any silences. I'm not even kidding, I would remove literally any point that's like that, just to make it smooth all the way through. So you can imagine it takes a while, but I do that while I'm actually listening through the podcast to see if there's anything that should be removed or anything that anyone's actually asked to specifically be removed. There has been the occasional time when someone's made a joke and then said, Tyler, just remove that. They know that they pushed the boundaries a little bit too far. So I need to, as a good editor, listen through and remove those bits, because you don't want to piss off your guests. I would say there's essentially 2 things that are big priorities here. If you're an editor and you're just getting into podcast editing, make sure you don't clip. That's just a thing that any sound producer would do, I suppose. And make sure that if someone's asked you to remove something, that you kind of remove it. Apologies if someone has actually messaged me and said, can you remove this? And I haven't. Typically, I would do it if it's actually in the podcast, or if someone tells me right at the end, that thing I did, remove that. I would go back and remove it. One other thing that I normally do here, and I'm probably doing it at the wrong time, and I'm going to save a few seconds here because I'm not going to do it to the entire podcast. It will take a while. Pretend the rest of the podcast there. I'm just saving loading time. What I would do after I would repair the entire clips and do all that science stuff, I would remove the DC offset by going into Effect and then Normalize. And what that does is get rid of any phasing issues. I don't think I'm doing it at the right point. There's probably some audio engineers out there that have been doing this for a living that are probably shaking their heads thinking, I've done it at the wrong time, woo. But, this is the kind of methods that I've kept to. If you're following my example, it's not the perfect way of doing it, but it's the way I do it. Also, another little handy tip. These buttons up here save a hell of a lot of time. That one fits the selection. So say if I go, oh, what's that really loud bit there? I would just go, boop, and then listen to it, and it's Louise laughing, And the other one, which I just used purely by instinct, it's a fit project. So if the entire podcast was back again, I could go boop, and it shows the whole thing. The reason why I rely heavily on these is because zooming in and zooming out on my computer, I've had the occasional time where I'm zooming in or zooming out a little bit too fast, and it actually freezes Audacity for a little while. It can be rather frustrating. Anyway, now that you actually have this... Oh, one thing I am going to show you. I do have the podcast already edited somewhere. 1 second. Yeah, Ty Edit. There we go. I normally name it with Ty Edit at the end to make sure they know it's the one that's been edited and the one that I know I've edited. That didn't make any sense. Anyway. I guess another pro tip, if it looks like Audacity's frozen, like it has down here, like the weird windows and stuff, don't click on anything because it just causes more of an issue. It actually freezes it for longer, so be patient with the software. It is a free program after all. I'm quickly going to go and do a before and after, because here's one I made earlier. Here's pretty much the podcast in full. It's about 1 hour 49 seconds. And the reason why I remove all those silences is because you also get a smaller file. That's the entire podcast. Nothing has been removed. Like, there's been no jokes that someone said, "Oh, can you remove that for me, please?" Everything is still there in its entirety. All I've done is remove the silences. And it's now 57 minutes long and 41 seconds. So I've shaved off about 3 minutes, which in the long run probably saves you a few megabytes, who knows. Also, you may see that there's some random silences here, and I'm going to show you what they do in a second. That's okay, actually, you probably don't have to be a genius to figure that out. That's where the intro goes. And that is where the credits go. Whoop. I normally leave a gap for them. I used to put them in another track when I didn't have other software to edit with. Now I just put it in Logic Pro, which I'm going to go to now. But what I would do, I'd export this audio. And I've already kind of got a file here that's from the test example. But for now, I'm going to overwrite that one. Demonstration. I'm going to save the file as an Apple file, AIFF, because that's where it's going. I'm also saving this, or exporting this straight to my memory stick. Yeah, replace it. Here's metadata. I used to type up stuff like, Shifty Key Podcast, blah, blah, blah. This is the other one, with the number 99 or something, but really that's not important. It's only if you're opening it in like QuickTime or Windows Movie Maker, which we don't typically do. And then I click OK. So what that now does is send the file to my memory stick. And I'll show you what I do with that afterwards, when it goes from my laptop to the other side of the desk, which is the Mac. So yeah, I'll set up the recording for the Mac, and I'll join you there.